Hi, everybody. As I said, good morning or early afternoon to those of you here with us in the States, and later in the afternoon or perhaps evening for those of you watching from Europe, and especially for Professor Milette Shamir, who's joining us today from Tel Aviv University. I'm very excited to host her and talk to her about all things academia, Israel, US, as part of our Academia Talk series. And especially, we're fortunate to have her here with us within the context of Women's History Month. So it's always good to see leading and influential women. Professor Milette Shamir is the Vice President for Academic International Affairs at Tel Aviv University and a researcher in the field of American Studies in the Faculty of Humanities. Professor Shamir joined Tel Aviv University in 1998 after earning her PhD from Brandeis University. Her research on 19th century literary and cultural history has been published by Columbia University Press, Penn University Press, and other leading venues. She has been invited as a visiting researcher to several universities, including Duke University, the University of Texas in Austin, and New York University. Shamir is currently the editor in chief of the journal Poetics Today, and from 2015 to 2019, she served as Vice Dean for Humanities and Academic Affairs. She co founded Tel Aviv University's American Studies program in 2006 and served as its head for 13 years. She served as chair of the Department of English and American Studies from 2006 till 2009. In 2012, she founded TAU's, or Tel Aviv University's, pioneering undergraduate program for international students, and we'll talk about it today, the BA in Liberal Arts, and she served as its academic director until 2016. As I said, we're very, very happy and fortunate to have you with us today, Professor Shamil.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
That's great. And before we go into the talk with you, which will delve into the different topics, let's just get a feel for Tel Aviv University in this short clip that you brought for us. Yeah, that woke me up. Yeah, it's always good to see Tel Aviv and the University of Tel Aviv.
Yeah, the sound was not perfect on that, but I hope people at least got to see some of the images of our campus.
Yeah, and also there was at least the words, on the bottom there.
That's right.
So, yeah, they got to see, and I think also the idea. I think that Tel Aviv, and if it's okay with you, we'll just jump right in. A little bit that Tel Aviv University is located in the center, or very close to the center of the city of Tel Aviv Yafo, which is known as the hub or the heart of Israeli innovation, Israeli high tech technology. Most of our companies that they're afterwards, we see them on Nasdaq and are bought by Google and other huge American or not just American companies start in Tel Aviv. And in this video, and if you can talk about it just a little bit, they're saying, the classroom is not a classroom, right? The lab is not a lab. It actually is, it's something else. It's a place to discover and a place to go into the unknown. So can you tell us a little bit about this sentiment that Tel Aviv University, I know, tries to incorporate in all its different schools, and as well as talk about a little bit about the internationalization of Tel Aviv University that you're in charge of, and what does this mean in this context?
Sure. Yeah, you already brought a lot of different issues to the table. So maybe I'll start with the first thing that you mentioned, and that is the relationship between Tel Aviv University and the city of Tel Aviv. Because that is obviously a very important feature of our university, the fact that it is located in Tel Aviv. There's a synergy between the city of Tel Aviv and Tel Aviv University campus, almost like, NYU and its connection to New York City. Tel Aviv University would not be what it is had it not been located in the city of Tel Aviv, and the city of Tel Aviv would not have been the same without the university. How would I try to characterize the synergy between the city and the university? We have to talk about the spirit of Tel Aviv as a city, the vibe of Tel Aviv. I'm sure a lot of people who are listening in have been to Tel Aviv and know it. So what I'll say now will ring true to them. But maybe a way to think about the vibe of Tel Aviv is to remember a little bit of its history, right? It was established, what is it, about 110 years ago, and it became the first modern Hebrew city, modeled on the European cities with cafes and hotels and cultural institutions. You know, it soon became the city that never sleeps. But very importantly, it also grew alongside Jaffa, right? And Jaffa is one of the oldest port cities in the world. It is 3,000 years old. It is dominated by Arab culture, by Middle Eastern traditions. And, you know, and Tel Aviv was united with Jaffa. So this combination made the city kind of explode with energy, with creativity. And it created this really special mix, I think, of multiculturalism, pluralism, openness, tolerance, right? And all these things, all these energies are very much present, I think, also on the Tel Aviv University campus. We're a very diverse campus, very committed to pluralism, to freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, with a very creative vibe. And part of that, Tammy, is what you mentioned before, and that is the fact that, among other things, Tel Aviv is also the startup city of the startup nation, right? This is where the
Nice.
most important high-tech industries located in Israel, where at any given moment there are hundreds of startups, growth companies, multinational companies. And Tel Aviv University draws from this, you know, its spirit of innovation. It also contributes to it. Some of the things that we're really proud of here at Tel Aviv University is the fact that we are, for example, repeatedly ranked among the top 100 universities in terms of innovation. We're number 8 in the top 10 universities that produce VC-backed founders. We're the only non-American university in the top 10
Really?
list. Yes,
Wow.
ahead of such schools as Princeton and Yale, I might add.
Impressive.
We're the first university in Israel in terms of the number of patents that we filed. So there's a real connection between, you know, the startup city and Tel Aviv University in that sense. And maybe I'll add just one more thing to the mix, and that is that Tel Aviv is also, you know, it's a city of arts, city of culture. It's the cultural capital of Israel. You know, Tel Aviv has given birth to great talents in music, in dance, in film. You know, talents that sometimes set a new international standard for excellence. And it's one of my favorite stories about Tel Aviv University is that when it was founded in the 1960s, there was a big debate in Israel. You know, not everybody remembers that or was alive at this point, but there was really a question. You know, people asked, why do we need another university in Israel? Right? There's
Interesting.
Hebrew University, that's the big research university. You know, with all its you know, the honor of being the first university. There's the Technion in Haifa, which does the, you know, the kind of the engineering fields. Bar Ilan was just born as a kind of a more religious school. So why do we need another university in Tel Aviv? You know, everything's so small in Israel. And the mayor of Tel Aviv, who at that time was Mordechai Namir, he said that the reason why we need a university in Tel Aviv is because Tel Aviv is a cultural center. It's the cultural center of Israel. So you need a university that would reflect that. And so when Tel Aviv University was established, it became the only university in Israel to have an arts faculty. And the
Wow.
arts faculty is very important on campus. You know, just to give a few examples, we have the Bookman Mehta School of Music, that is really one of the best schools around the world for music. It partners with the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra in Tel Aviv to provide elite music education to international students. We have the Tisch School of Film and Television that is one of the most important dynamos in
Yeah.
Israel's kind of growing film and TV industry. And you know, I could go on and on, but it's, you know, it's that connection, not just high tech, but also culture that I think is very important in terms of the relationship between the campus and the city.
And also, by the way, what you said about only in the 1960s that Tel Aviv University was founded, it's so ingrained these days. Well, as you said, you're one of the leading schools in many different aspects in the world, but in Israel, it's so ingrained, Tel Aviv University, that I think that people don't even bother to, it is an interesting story that you said it was an issue that had to be discussed whether to open it or not, because it is part of Tel Aviv now. And I think even those who don't live and went, to other universities secretly, I'm telling you, like me, but it is a thing. It's an institution, and it's interesting
That's
to
right.
learn that.
That's right. It's hard to imagine Israel today without Tel Aviv University, which
Yeah.
has become since, the largest university in Israel with around 30,000 students studying here. So yeah, it's hard to remember an Israel before there was Tel Aviv University.
Absolutely. And so this goes, you're so well ingrained in the city, and the city comes into the campus, and the campus and the student go out to the city. But you're also, you're looking internationally. You are, and you're in charge of making Tel Aviv, or the research, or what you're doing to make it international. Can you tell us, and we'll go, can you tell us about that? What does the university actively do, and why is it important to be part of the international culture of academia?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for asking about that, because that truly is my passion these days. This goal of internationalizing the university. Why is it important? Well, I could start with something that's obvious, and that is that universities, research universities, are in their very essence, and from the time in which they were born in Europe. Um, Internationalization is part of their DNA, right? The goal of a research university is to advance knowledge.
Right.
And knowledge thrives when it can move freely, right? When it's not stopped by national borders or checkpoints, when it can kind of circulate around the globe. So the best universities have always been international. But I think that some of the developments of recent decades, like globalization, easier travel, before Corona, the digital revolution, of course. All these developments meant that major universities are taking a much more active stance towards internationalization. Investing a lot of resources and energies in internationalizing the university. And Tel Aviv University is certainly among those universities. We have developed a strategic plan which aim is to very significantly increase Tel Aviv University's international presence, its international impact, its international visibility over the next few years. Which is not to say that that we're not already a pretty international university. We have several hundreds of agreements with institutions around the world. We have joint degree programs with universities like Columbia and Northwestern, and Peking University in China.
But
We have over 2,000 students come every year from all over the world, but we have the potential to grow a lot more in that area, and that's what I'm working on.
yeah, so two questions I just want to ask. When you say a joint degree, can you tell us a little, what does it mean? What if a student now going to Columbia, going here to Columbia, how do they actually study? What degree do they get? Just explain it to us a little bit.
Sure. It's a wonderful model, and it's one that we are really seeking to expand. Every joint degree is a little different. The joint degree that we have with Columbia University is actually a dual degree program. And what that means is that students, and these are all excellent students who are, who've managed to get into both these universities, they come to Tel Aviv for 2 years. They study here. After completing these 2 years, they move to New York and study for 2 years at Columbia. And at the end of these 4 years, they get this, not one, but two degrees. They get a degree, a BA from Tel Aviv University and a BA from
Wow.
Columbia.
In the same
Um,
subject?
they can major in two different things in the two different schools. So that is a model that we love. It's a new program for us, but it's a wonderful opportunity for Israeli students to go to New York, for American students and other international students to come here, and it's certainly something that this kind of model is something that we are willing to or wanting to expand.
And a question, I might be a little bit layperson's but it's all in English, right?
It's all in English. Yes, it's all in English. And one of the things that we're working on now is also to make sure that Tel Aviv University offers a variety of courses in all fields in English, because that would be the basis for developing these kinds of international programs. You asked, why is it important? And maybe I'll say a few words about that.
Please.
There are a lot of reasons why a university needs to be international, but I'll give you my top three very briefly. First and foremost, internationalization is crucial for research, right? International collaboration between researchers produces the best research. And it also ensures that this research has visibility and recognition on a world stage, right? So I was just listening to a talk by some of my colleagues in the UK. The people in the UK are now very worried about what will be the consequences of Brexit. Are British universities still going to be able to have international academic collaborations? So they did this study and they found that articles that are authored through international collaborations get 4 or 5 times the exposure of articles that are authored by a person from a single location. So it's really astounding how important that is. And part of what we're doing at Tel Aviv University is to create a kind of a wide and a deep network of collaborations with great universities around the world in order to provide that environment for research collaboration. So that's one thing, right? A very important thing we already began to talk about, and that is to bring international students in. We want to be able to bring the best students from around the world to Tel Aviv on all levels, undergraduates, graduate students, postdocs, short-term, full degrees. And that's super important for us. And it's important for us not because international students are money makers for universities, as some people mistakenly assume. In Israel universities, education is subsidized, tuition is very low, right? We're not interested in international students for that reason. We're interested in international students because of diversity on campus. And diversity is, again, it's key to quality research. I have a friend who teaches in the chemistry school here, and he always says to me, when I sit in my lab, and there are the Israeli research students, and then there's a research student from California, and there's one from Germany, and there's one from Singapore, and there's one from Brazil. This guarantees that there are going to be creative solutions to problems in the lab.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's just, it's a matter of having all these diverse point of views and different academic trainings that create this this kind of out-of-the-box thinking in our various schools and disciplines. So that's the second thing, right? Having a lot of international programs, a lot of international students. We have over 20 international programs at the moment in areas that Tel Aviv University is strong at, archaeology, cybersecurity, diplomacy, Middle Eastern studies. I could go on and on, but it's really a very wide span. And I'll just say quickly what the third thing is, which is, I think, is no less important. Why internationalize? So there's research, there are international students, but there are also the Israeli students. We have a responsibility, I think, as a university to give Israeli students better exposure to the world and better skills to lead a life that is global and not just local, right? To become global citizens, to have the tools to succeed in a global market. So part of what we're trying to do in internationalizing the university is to make sure that our students get the language skills that they need in English. So a lot of courses in English, again, something we already brought up. internationalizing the curriculum, providing opportunities for Israeli students to go abroad and study and do internships, right? All these things are very, very crucial. And of course, all these things are linked to each other, because if you have good international students, you will have good collaborations later on when they return to the countries. When you have, Israelis alongside international students, you have this internationalization at home created for the Israeli students. So altogether kind of creates an ecosystem of internationality, which is what basically we're trying to strengthen here on campus.
No, I love this, and I love the responsibility that you take for the Israeli students. It's something that I never thought about or never heard of from other places. And you're absolutely right. Today in this world, and we grew up in a bit of a different world, perhaps, but everything is so connected and so immediate that I think many students, especially who now they feel like global citizens already, and if you come and nurture it for them and teach them and educate them accordingly, you'll get afterwards what better diplomats or researchers or Middle East analysts, if they do get to experience, the student next to them will not be somebody they're very familiar with, and will get to collaborate with other universities or get professors in from other places. I think it's an amazing holistic approach, and very correct,
And
I think.
Tammy, also better human beings, right? I mean, it's not just about career, even though career, of course, is very important. It's also about creating graduates of Tel Aviv University who are able to understand different points of view, who are able to navigate between cultures, who develop, empathy and tolerance. These are, assets that are, I think, as important as career goals.
Beautiful. And can we, on internationalization, but can we try to incorporate COVID? Because you said about students coming to Israel, the coronavirus pandemic, I'm assuming, and you'll tell us, stopped it almost completely. The same with Israeli students maybe going abroad or bringing research in. Can you tell us how Tel Aviv University and how your job was affected by the coronavirus?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll say that I stepped into the position of Vice President International exactly as the virus hit last spring. So a lot of my dreams and visions for this job had to be kind of rethought and changed in light of the crisis. Certain things didn't change very dramatically. For example, if we were going to have an international conference on campus and we couldn't hold it on campus, we held it on Zoom. So it's not exactly the same. Nothing can replace the human interactions in a conference, but there are also advantages. More people show up. Where COVID-19 hit hard is with bringing international students to campus and caring for them. Unlike, I think, a lot of other universities, we decided early on not to suspend our international programs and to allow students who want to come to do so. And those who want to stay at home and learn through Zoom, that was also fine. But we did end up bringing a significant number of students to campus. And the challenges were, Tammy, I can tell you, they were enormous.
I can.
The skies opened and then they closed and then they opened again and they closed again, right?
And quarantine and not, and
Quarantine, we're picking these students up from the airport. We're bringing them into our dorms where they have to stay in a room for 2 weeks, and we have to to provide their every need. It was very, very complicated, sometimes very frustrating for students, sometimes very frustrating for us. But it was also a learning experience because I think that one of the important lessons that we learned is, what a huge responsibilities universities have towards their international students, that far exceeds the academic responsibility. Being an international student is not easy. You're going to another country, you're going to another culture where you don't speak the language. If you're coming to Israel, as you know, Israel can be a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people who've never been here before. So to come during a global pandemic, with all the vulnerabilities that this produces, is really very, very hard. And we had to become family to these students. Maybe I'll give you one story that was particularly poignant. one of our research students from Australia decided to come to Israel during the pandemic to do his research here. And unfortunately, in the first few months of the stay here, he had a very severe medical crisis, not corona, but something else. And for several weeks, he was on life support in the hospital. Tragically, at the very same time, his father in Australia contracted corona and passed away. Now, think about the situation, right? He's here in a strange country, in a life-threatening situation. His family can't come because they're mourning the loss of the father, and also they can't travel. When finally someone from the family was able to make it, he couldn't go into the hospital because of
Wow.
corona
Corona.
restrictions. And it's at moments like this that, the university needs to step up and to take the place of family. And I'm so proud of my colleagues and the staff at our international school who really dropped everything in order to be with his student, 24/7,
Wow.
to make life easier for his uncle to come and to see him through this crisis. He's now, I'm happy to say he's healthy and he's back on campus, but it really was a learning experience for all of us. And, I'm really glad that we were able to step up to the plate.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
yeah,
dealing
and
with such an extreme situation, it does then reflect, and I'm sure how you deal with the students that are there, and hopefully don't get into this, who took it easier. But I wanted to ask about vaccines now, and you're saying you're still this Australian students and others are still on campus. Can you tell us a little bit, what does campus life look now? Are the students vaccinated? Did you help them there? Like, how, if I came, it's starting to be evening, if I came today to your campus, to Tel Aviv University, what would I find?
well, that was another big operation that eventually we were successful in making happen. We decided at some point that we really need to make sure that each and every one of our international students who wants to be vaccinated would have the opportunity to do so. So we brought Magen David Adom, which is the national ambulance service, to campus, and we set up shop in our auditorium, and we
Wow,
ended up vaccinating around 400 people, international and non-international. Just last week, we gave them the second dose.
nice.
And let me tell you, Tommy, the international students were incredibly happy. You should have seen the smiles on their faces, really priceless. And as a result of that, they, along with the other Israeli students who are vaccinated, and very, very many of them are getting ready to go back to the classroom physically after the Passover break. So we're going to be
Amazing.
able to be in a room with students again, which is very,
Wow.
very exciting.
Wow. The big lectures, small lectures, everybody's going to be back on campus?
Pretty much everybody who has been vaccinated, which is, in Israel is a majority of people. Right.
Amazing.
So it will be
Amazing.
gradual. It's the first year students first, the international students first, but eventually we're hoping that everybody who can come would be able to do so.
And if somebody then is planning for the next school year, come next October, then hopefully your gradual opening and will allow then university to be almost back to perhaps pre-corona for vaccinated people in the upcoming school year in September, October.
That's what we're hoping for. Of course, one of the things we learned, Tammy, as you well know, is not to make any predictions this year. Things can change from day to day, but if the trend continues as it is now, we're hopeful that we will resume something resembling normalcy in the next academic year.
Amazing, amazing. And if we're already on campus, well, not I'm not literally, but on campus, I wanted to ask you a bit about inclusivity of different communities in Israel within Tel Aviv. We talked about being open to the world, being international, doing international exchanges from China to the U.S., California, and New York, but a little bit within Israeli society. I'll just say a quick word, and then I'll let you because. Israel is not a homogeneous society, as uh, I don't know if all our listeners and viewers know this, but we have even within the Jewish part of the populations, that's the largest part. We have a varied a whole range of different people, different beliefs, different culture, different not different different levels of religiosity or religion in each one. And of course, we have our Arab and Muslim students and Christians living in Israel and Bedouins. We have really, really varied groups. Can you tell us a little bit now, looking back into Israel, what is the university actively doing in order to incorporate these students in order to be an inclusive university within Israel?
Yes, absolutely. As much as internationalization is important on our agenda, so is the promotion of diversity on campus. And you said that Israel is a heterogeneous country. You remember a long time ago, Israel's president, Ruby Rivlin, very famously described it in terms of, the different tribes of Israel, right? There's a tribe of the ultra-Orthodox Jews, and there's a tribe of the Muslim Arabs and of the secular Jews. And really, I mean, one of the things that are interesting about that is that because we have pretty much separate school systems for all these different tribes, the first place where they really come together is at the university. So the Israeli universities have a responsibility to have a diverse student body, and also they have a national role to play in bringing those different tribes together into, interaction and connection. So at Tel Aviv University, this really is a priority. Maybe I'll give you two examples.
Please.
One is the ultra-Orthodox community. I think that a lot of Israelis today would say that the future prosperity, resilience of Israel in many ways depends on the successful integration of the ultra-Orthodox community into the Israeli public sphere, into the labor market. And this can only happen if the Haredim, right, the ultra-Orthodox, are given opportunities and access to higher education. I think there was last week, there was a short story in the newspaper that says there's actually a very steep rise in the interest among the ultra-Orthodox in enrolling in universities because of the Corona crisis. These communities, as you know, were hit particularly hard, health-wise and economically, and they understand the need to have access to higher education in order to
So
improve the
interesting.
predicament. Right. So at Tel Aviv University, we managed to increase the number of Haredi students significantly from 2 5 years ago to 150 this year.
Wow.
It's still not a huge number. 150 is not, where we would like to be. We would like to have many, many, many more. But we're trending in the right direction, right? This is what we
By
want to
huge
see happen.
percentages, if we look at percentages, yeah.
That's right. That's right. And the other example are Arab students. As a university, we have an interest to attract the best Arab students in Israel to come to Tel Aviv University, to keep them here once they are admitted. And maybe that's, there's a way also to tie that in with the culture of high tech and innovation and entrepreneurship, because we talked a little bit about kind of Tel Aviv as a startup nation. I think it's very clear that an entrance ticket into this world of startup nation today is through studying engineering or computer science at one of the good universities in Israel, such as Tel Aviv. And so it was important for us to bring Arabs to all our different faculties and schools, but it was very important to make sure that they're represented in adequate numbers in engineering and computer science. And that is something that we've actually succeeded in doing. And I feel that Tel Aviv University should be very proud of that, right? We've managed this past year to reach the goal of around 20% of students in engineering,
Wow.
Arab students. So we
Both
doubled the
male
number
and
of Arab.
female Arab students?
Yes, so we doubled the number of Arab students generally, but we tripled the number of Arab women who are studying engineering.
Wow.
So that their percentage in the School of Engineering is now the same as their percentage in the general population, which makes sense. And I have to say that we achieved this without lowering the entrance requirements, or without, any special discount on the basis of their excellence. So
You
that,
reached out to their communities and high schools in the Arab or Muslim towns, or how did you get them? How did you get them to apply and come?
So part of it is outreach, bringing them to campus, showing them life on campus, making them feel welcome on campus. A very large part of that, in both cases, for Arabs, for the ultra-Orthodox, and for all the other groups that we're trying to increase the numbers of, like Ethiopians, people with special needs, and others, our strategy is to take a holistic approach. So our Dean of Students developed a kind of a multifaceted support system for these groups that includes scholarships. It includes subsidized private tutorials. It includes psychological support, academic mentorship, career counseling, right? So that each student in these groups can find the thing that he or she needs in order to succeed at Tel Aviv University. And work is never done. We've had some success. You can't rest on our laurels. There's still a lot more to do. For example, we progress with a number of Arab undergraduates, but we're still lagging behind in terms of Arab graduate students, certainly in terms of Arab faculty members. So, this requires constant work, constant investment of resources, but it's such an important goal that, we're really devoted to seeing, the goals met.
It's amazing. And it ties into what you said in the beginning, right? About international diversity. If you sit in a lab, you said, right, with a Brazilian researcher and an American researcher and a German researcher and an Israeli, how much more maybe productive or pioneering you can be and move forward. And, this is, I think, a sort of a mirror image with it, even within Israel. And I think if you combine the two, it really is, to quote your movie, boundless or limitless, or,
Yeah.
there are no limits if you can get everybody together towards one goal. Just we have a couple minutes, and there was another question about COVID. They asked if what has as University Tel Aviv, because we were talking about research, any research you would like to mention, or something that was found, or a study that you did about COVID and Corona that might be worth
Um,
mentioning.
yeah, I mean, as you said before, the sky really is the limit. There's so much to talk about in terms of what the university has done during this crisis, both in terms of our faculty members who are also doctors and, very busy at hospitals, together with the School of Medicine students and nursing students. And of course, research. There's been a lot of very important research done during this crisis. We've had an interdisciplinary center founded for the fighting pandemics, that is truly kind of draws from all the different parts on campus, from the sciences, but also from the social sciences, the humanities, education.
Interesting combination.
Yes, and we've had also specific research projects that made a big difference. For example, there was one project that stands out that was about genomic sequencing. So the idea is that you can kind of track the progression of the virus within Israel by decoding the genomic sequence of the coronavirus, and that had huge consequences, both in terms of understanding how the virus spreads and where it comes from. And for example, one of the things that were discovered is how important super spreaders are in the spread of coronavirus. How that they're responsible for most of the cases, but also it had an impact on the way in which quarantine and lockdown policies were formulated. So there was a lot of action all over campus that tried to address this crisis. And maybe I'll say one more thing about that. If we
Yeah.
go back to my own world of internationalization, one of the things that we discovered is that this crisis has actually produced a lot of opportunities. And some of these opportunities are in teaching. So whereas I think, for American students, it's very common if you're an undergraduate to take a semester off and go for a semester abroad, right? It's part of the ritual of being a college
Experience.
student, part of the experience. In Israel, not so much, because Israeli students are older. They are, they have less resources to spend on a semester abroad. The degree is shorter. So a very tiny percentage of Israeli students actually have taken advantage of study abroad programs in the past. But, here comes this pandemic. Everybody switches to Zoom. And suddenly it becomes easy to create an international classroom. Even if students don't physically move from country to country, Israeli students can now sit with a bunch of students from all over the world. So one example of that, which your question reminded me of, is this semester the School of Public Health is giving a course on vaccinations. Because Israel has had success in
Yeah.
vaccinating its
Huge
population,
success.
suddenly everybody wants to hear what the Israeli experts on vaccinations have to say. So we decided to open up this class on vaccinations, which is normally just for Israeli students, to students from all over the world. And
Nice.
half of the students there are from the US, from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, from the Middle East. And they're now sitting in a classroom together with our local Israeli students. And it's just fascinating. It's fascinating
Amazing.
for the international students who are learning something about Israeli expertise in vaccinations. But it's also fascinating for the Israeli students who are studying with students who have a very different perspective, very, very different experience of the corona pandemic. So it's really a win-win, and that's it's one of the silver linings of corona.
And we can only hope that this sort of participation, even when you do go back to physical school, you will continue and keep it, for the future as well. Do, a combined or hybrid, as you said, the student in the US can still join you via Zoom or from Africa. And that is amazing. We don't have much time left. So, one, I'll say again, and we'll give information later as well. For those who are thinking of perhaps applying, because the schools in Israel or Tel Aviv University will hopefully, as you said, we can't predict anything anymore, but hopefully will be open for physical studies in the fall and the coming fall. So for students who would like to apply or see what programs Tel Aviv University has. But we had a question, if you have perhaps sort of like Coursera, does Tel Aviv University open for non-students courses, or can they join different programs or seminars online for those of us who are a little older than your regular university student?
Yes, Tel Aviv University does have a number of courses on Coursera. Some of them are award-winning and very successful, and that's always a possibility. The other thing is that our international school, as early as this summer, is going to open up certain courses for international participation, including a course on COVID-19. Attacked from different perspectives. One of the main things that Tel Aviv University is now known for is interdisciplinary research, because it's a comprehensive university and has 9 different faculties, more than 30 different schools. So we like to organize both research and courses that are interdisciplinary in nature. And so this course on COVID-19 is going to include economists and kind of medical health professionals and psychologists and disaster management experts and historians and Middle Eastern studies experts, each of whom will bring his or her own perspective and kind of create this course. We already ran it once last summer, we're going to run it again this summer. And I think it's going to be a great experience.
Yeah, you'll have even more perspective this summer to talk about it. Yeah, a growing course. Yeah, and hopefully next year it can be one of your history uh, history lessons. Professor Milette Shamir, I said at the beginning, thank you so much for joining us and talking with us here. it was really a pleasure, and even more so in Women's History Month, to see such an accomplished academician. What's the anybody know?
Academic.
Academic.
Yes.
And really any day of the year, but I think in this month it does have an extra little bit of importance to show. But we've been talking about this way before, not just for this month, because I think your story and Tel Aviv University is very relevant to our audience here, who's both interested in Israel and in studying in Israel. We have a lot more questions and a lot more things I would love to talk to you about, but either in another opportunity or another time. And just, I need to do a quick shout out to Dalit Parser, our academic affairs coordinator, who you know well, who did this program and the rest of our academia talk sessions in a very, very professional, here another right good professional woman who's moving things along, and of course always our digital team. So thank you again, Professor Shamir. It was incredible.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.